project, you want to deploy the services. And the technology we mentioned before is the mean. Mean stands for the four of them, the MongoDB, Express, Angular, and Node. So Mongo is a non-SQL database, and Express is a web application framework that runs on Node. We also have Angular is a JavaScript framework running on the browser with Node as the execution environment for the server siding and networking application. So in this case, our application. So how does the mean work? So you see they scatter in different places, but they are all working together as a whole. They are all in JavaScript, and they have different parts for their jobs. Angular is working on the client side, so this is front end, and Node and Express will be working on the server, so helping the services back and forth. So, and they will also interact with the database that is helped by MongoDB. So in general, so MongoDB is a database on this right side. Node.js is working on the services, and Express providing the routings that connecting to the service to the front and the database, everything. And Angular is working as JavaScript UI that is the client with the access at the portal to services. So, and they will be sending the requests back and forth. The important part is there's no page refresh. This is a single page application. And whenever you click on a tab of the navigation bar, you don't refresh the whole page, but rather your body will be refreshed, update as a section there. So it's a single page application. Update wherever you need. So that returns fast loading speed and responsive website. And the project starts with this. I'm currently using the local services. So for the Angular, it's working on the front end. It's responsible for the user interface, and it's running on the 4200. The Node with Express is backend. It's processing the request from the front end and requests and queries with the database. Running on the host 3000. And the Mongo database helps to store data. It's running 7017. So that's the basic layout of the project. And the tools I'm using, mainly this one is using add-ons for the text editor for those JavaScripts, also including and CSS files. This is a good environment to develop. You can else, so any text editor. And the command prompt is to starting the services and the database. So you have a service workup and edit as you go. So every change will be tracked on live. And Chrome is the one I'm using for develop purpose and to do the results, debug and test. You can pretty much see the results going live and for the responses. And the DevTools helps a lot for debugging. You can see the application right status and tokens.
Right now you're running on Windows?
Yeah. The application is running on Windows.
So why don't you run a PowerShell script so you don't have to use the command prompt to start everything up?
Yeah, there might be.
Yeah. Think about it, though.
Yeah. I will later consider that. It seems very reasonable to use a PowerShell. But for now, for the current moment, for different services. And that's basically the layout of the project. And the probings I want to talk about today. The first one is the front and back end interactions, which is how the Angular and Node interact with each other. So what we're gonna do from this part is I want to talk about the modular setup for the Angular and components involved, and also how the routings working together with the front end and back end together. So the goal for this part is we want to have a user interface that displays various pages across our website in the client, and also want to set up the entry points for the backend services. So first, you're gonna have pages, layouts, and then you want to connecting those portals or the services on the backend. That's basically how we're going to do and how we're going to code. And the project pretty much looks like this. We have a root, which is our project folder. And inside, you will have a couple different ones. The Angular source is the one we manage the Angular, and it's being initialized by Angular. It has many components inside and services we can add and edit for our own use. And other things that is created by Node, that is powered by Node and Express, help us to build up the services and routings. And let's first go into the Angular side. So the most important part of the Angular side is inside of the source. There's an application, app folder. This is our application. There's a couple components. These are the building blocks for our websites. And we have the app.component.ts. This is the one that helps to manage the components and how do they working together. And we also have the module.ts that helps us to import the modules for us to use, and this will help a lot for building the websites. And we also created our own services. For my case, I'm creating the authentication and validation, and also the main page. So that's basically how we lay out the Angular. So, I have an idea. So I want to show this code snippet in the presentation first. Later on, we run a demo for each probe. I think it's better view in this way. So I will specify the route or the directory where it's located and the most important content connected to others. So inside of the Angular, the left side is the Angular. So inside of the app component, you will have this is for the main page view because it's a single page application. So you have this page that basically I want to have a nav bar that's on the top, like very regular websites. You have a nav bar on the top. You have different tabs to click on. And you will have different components. The most important components for my later part, such as the body, is the router. So the routers help us to navigate through different tabs. So whenever the user clicks, it will update the body to pull out the right body to show and update to let the client to see. So for each of the routers, they are corresponding to one of the components. For example, if the user click the registration page, it will sending to this. It will be pulling out the components that is now for the registered. They will have a form to submit with 4 groups of user field that they can type in. And the next one, I'm going to talk about the routings and how the routings works. So I was creating a app route that is basically helping the navigation bar to help them to determine which components are going to be connected and pull out when the users click on that tab. And such as we have the routers for registration and login and such on. That's inside of the app module.ts. And for each of the modules, such as, for example, the registration, it will be connected to the node services, which is located in the routes and the users. They will be helped to connect it once every time they go into the registration page. They will pull up the services that they can get users, whatever they type for the name, email, password, and name. So these are the 4 fields we are requesting the user to type in. So we will be processing later on in the database. That's basically how the components, building blocks, build up the websites, and how the routing works with the backend services, so that it and response. So let's do some.
So all of that was interacting with Angular's framework.
Yeah, framework. So after we're talking about the building block, the routings, I'm going to have a view about the website. just first mention that now I'm currently using the command prompt. You can see that I'm running with the MongoDB that base. Also running this server that is running on and connecting to the database on 2017. This one is the Angular one that we use.
Really hard to read. Is there any way to make that brighter? Probably not.
Bigger or
Go to command line properties and set the font.
faster the font?
Of the title bar, just click on the right click on the title bar. Yeah, right there. Go to properties, and then you can.
That's cursor.
Make it, yeah, well, not that big, or we, yeah, let's try that. Okay, that'll help.
Yeah, this one is the and one. So this one is the server resolution. A bit different from the so this one is the server is running on the port 3000 on local host. And it's connecting to the database, our own database 7017. And the that will later on. Yeah, okay. Basically, I'm running on these 3 services, and this is the website. And I built the basic layout, but since this week I'm working on the backend services, there's more need to be added later on. So now, for now, I have the home page, which is usually your resume, and the repository that stores your files you can view, and the story page that you can share your stories with different stages once. And I have a login so that users can log in if they have an account. If they don't, so we have the registration one. So we will demo this later with the second probe, because the second probe I talked about interaction with the database. So for now, this is more important about the Angular and the Node.js, which creates front view and also connect to services. So we already talked about how the front end interact with the backend services and the routings. So next one, I'm going to talk about the database and the services, which is a node. And how do they work together? The topics I want to include is my database model and authentication and authorization, including with the exchange or communication between these two. And the goal for now is, for this part, I did the registration, login, and logout. But apparently, there's more to do with the websites. We'll talk about that later. Now, I self-define the localhost as a MongoDB service, and the model for the user, I create 4 fields. I have a name, email, username, and password. So this is the database model that we're going to use for the users. But later on, we will be adding more. So we have more additions, users such as resume, repository, and stories. So taking this example, so we have the database. So we, of course, want to do with functionality to implement those features. We want to get user by ID, so we can pull us, and also getting by username. Also, we want to add users and to get a password that helps them. And we have the each of them corresponding to the service and also connecting to the pages. So for example, the registration, the one we already saw before, that's inside the house, yes. that will taking these user typed for field, and then they will add the users. So if they don't, they will check the users. If nothing wrong, they will say registration is complete. If there's an error, they'll say fail to register it. And similar to the authentication that let the users to log in, we want to authenticate users to check. So first, we want to see if the username exists or not. If not, the username does not exist. So, later on, we want to compare the password, see if the password matches. Compare the password user typed in the field with the password corresponding to that username. If they match, the user will log in. Otherwise, the message will be password is wrong.
So what does logging in enable a user to do that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do?
So the login will be able to let the users to view the fields such as their own resume, the repository, and they also have, later on, we're adding the authorization for them to edit their resume, adding their stories, and upload their repository. So that's basically what I want to achieve. Yeah, I will later on talk about this because this week I'm working on the end development. For the presentation sake, I only did the part. But there will be more added. And we want to test with the sign up and login. So let's see the current users are, let's say I make test cases for a couple of ones. They are being here with the database. We'll be adding more. So you see this text field, they have 4 components that you can type. But what if you don't type, then you cannot submit because you cannot know user. So basically, that's make some cases like user, like, and also you can email. Hey, if I type an email, so it will say, we'll check the email. If I type a really good email formatting, although it's a fake email, so be able to count. And it will redirect to the login page. Login page, so you can log in with. First, let's check here for the database. It's there, so we have the username CSE775, and the password is in hash. Everything is in there. Now we can log in. There and so now it's been logged in, and we can see for our application, and we have the user token and users. The information will be displayed whenever the user log in. They have information. You can view it here. We don't send the password just for the user and protection. We can also log the user out back into the login page. So currently we done the user part. Later on, we want to enable users to change the content of their stories repository.
What could the users see if they don't log in?
Yeah, I want to add a protection. If the user didn't log in, they only have a welcome interface. But I also have an idea that maybe building a community, but I haven't done this framework yet. So maybe just say a welcome interface. Before the user log in, they can't see anything else.
Why wouldn't you let a user see everything but edit nothing without logging in?
Meaning that they can
You would like everybody in the world to see your resume, right? why would you force them to log in? So I would say, that's public,
Oh,
but logging in enables you to edit your part.
yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a really good idea. I was thinking about only user workspace, but the project idea is to showcase your resume and your profile. So
So let's showcase it.
Yeah, it's better to let them see by default.
Yeah.
This is what I currently have. But later on, for the specific user, they can only edit their own profile. That's what they.
This also makes it a little more interesting because now you have to have, when you navigate, you have to, that's where the permissions comes in. It's not a uniform permission for every page, it's just for selected pages.
Yeah, for the selected pages, they can
Or
be
selected access to the model or whatever.
Right. Yeah, and also later on, the access protection will be needed for each user for their own page. You also need to check users' identity, make sure they're editing their own profile. That's a basic later addition we will be doing. And next one, talk about a little bit about main versus ASP.NET. This is a topic I saw from the lecture page, and discuss within the performance comparison regarding the learnability with different languages, the database model, SQL and non-SQL, process speed overall with data comparison. There's also examples to showcase. In our case, I want to show how Ming is. So the basic structure is they having different language base. So the node is based on the JavaScript and C# is building the .NET. So the language is different and developing tools is also be different. JavaScript can be edited with any text editor, so very flexible, while the C# need to be VS Visual Studio is less flexible. Easier deployment on the node side compared to the .NET side. And although it's a little bit trickier in the node side to do async programming, it's worth it because these two advantages certainly. And the database model is also a little bit different. So the SQL one will be implemented by .NET, and we are using non-SQL for our main stack application. And they do have advantages over different areas. So they have the ideal scenario for the SQL. If you have logical related discrete data, and they requires a lot of the data integration for this case. And there's proven technology with developer experience, and support is needed for developing the SQL. A little bit higher bar than the SQL one, relatively. And for the non-SQL one, it's very ideal for processing the unrelated indeterminate data that is growing every day. Very suitable for the futures for big data and simpler or looser objectives. That helps you to start really quickly. And also, the speed and scalability is very important for the project. It's really flexible. So, in overall, we gotta say that non-SQL is regularly faster than the SQL one, and it's simpler. They normalize. They help you to retrieve all the information about single object that is very powerful and very useful.
Although I claim that you really still have to do joins with NoSQL with Mongo, because let's suppose you had a books database, so you got book information, author information, publisher information, and you don't want to duplicate the publisher for every book.
Yeah.
So you'll have references, okay? And so now when you're making queries using those references, you're doing the equivalent of the join operations. So, but it's just informal.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
They do have this separate disadvantage and for the non-SQL one, the processing is a little bit easier, so there's no need. for the simple one. So it might be suitable for our case. Like we're building a not that complicated. In this case, I'm like in my project, I will be more leaning towards one. For the sake of the main stack application, we're of course using the MongoDB. That's a little bit simple comparison with if we are building a SQL server that accepts a host and back with the response. And for the left side is the node implementation. Right side is the ASP.NET. And how do they perform against with each other? There's a data shows that for the certain amount of time, the node process more, and it takes less time to process.
Which is, red is Node.
Yeah, red is Node, and the blue is the Web API.NET. So you can see that the Node has a little bit advantage over the processing in terms of performance. Although they do have different advantages and different cases. So to take advantage of the multi-core system, Node.js must be clustered to achieve the most performance. And to outperform I/O intensive, the ASP.NET must using async await the keywords. So they do perform differently. They have advantage over in their own fields. But I say that Node.js is also very accessible for us. Most of the people, it's highly performance is better. And the just taking an example of streaming file services, it's very easy to achieve with the Node. You can have this block that will do the server for the file streaming, and it will take a lot of work compared to the ASP.NET. Another example is, what if you want later on you want to add a new field for your project? That's when your project is expanding and growing. So for the ASP.NET, you're gonna do a lot of jobs, like you change the schema and update the data and the model and then adding a field to the UI.
You may, and you're gonna have to reload the entire database.
Yeah.
So if you got 10,000 records in that, now you want to add a field, you got a problem.
Yeah, it takes a lot of steps and a lot of work to do for the .NET, and it's relatively light and easy for the main stack. You're just adding the field to the UI.
And you don't have to reload the data because it doesn't care.
Yeah,
some of the data doesn't have that field.
Yeah, it's very simple, and the ng modular will help us to building the connections again. So in terms of the building project or a fast-growing and scalable projects, the Min is more suitable in this case. And yeah, I would say that if you are starting a project and having growing potentials, the Min is definitely more suitable. So such as the small startups and the companies are doing more. And they don't need to worry about the development environment as well, because it doesn't require any like Visual Studio. They don't need to worry about the licensing fee. While the big companies tend to be using Visual Studios, so they do have different advantages over different areas.
One really interesting question is, ASP.NET is quite secure, designed to be secure. And the question is, how does the mean stack compare to that? Now, there's some things, for example, script injection, SQL injection, ASP.NET is very secure against, but mean doesn't have a script to inject. So, maybe it's not as one-sided as it first appears.
Yeah, to some extent, the ASP.NET is more comprehensive and secure. But Min is also, I think it has potential to be more secure and in the future. I think it has a bigger.
It'd be interesting, Tharud is doing a project somewhat similar to this. It'd be interesting if you guys would look a little bit at the security, not necessarily do a lot with it, but, consult Dr. Google a little bit about it and see, if you can help us understand that.
Yeah, indeed, it's an interesting question, because nowadays people more worry about their securities and their information protected, and it's a good topic to research in. And for my project, I also want to test with different security that is going through, and for the final project, if everything is done, I want to also test for the security and thinking about what are the attacks gonna come through and how do I approach to protect them. So that's also one part of the user protection and the privacy. Although it's not a big side, but later on there might be growing more bigger people. The more people involved into the project and also the user base, the more security problem it will be serious. So that's basically the Prob 3. We compare with the Ming and ASP.NET. So let's summarize the topics we just going through. The first one, we talked about the Angular and the Node. So the front end built by the Angular will helps the user to build their user interface, giving them the access point. And Node.js will be connecting the routes with the express, comprise, and accomplish those functionalities. And what I want to do later is to polish the front end. For now, although it's like a business, very simple, but it doesn't look very good. Later on, after everything is implemented, I want to polish the UI to be better looking. Although I think the black and white is very business-like style, simple, but I want to adding more functionality for users to have to access. And the MongoDB and Node is basically the server interact with the database. So the database is set up with the user model for now. Later on, I want to add user editable field. That's the to-do list. And server connecting, exchange the data to information such as sign up, login, and logout. Later on, to-do will be enable the users to edit their own fields. And lastly, we compare with the performance of the Ming and ASP.NET. So overall, in general, we can say that Ming is more accessible because of the nature and uniform the languages. ASP.NET is more comprehensive. That's the conclusion for now. So the remarks. So this project is the first one I attempt to build the entire website starting from scratch with a Ming stack. From last year, I built a ASP.NET. I have to admit it's pretty secure. It's already having built-in protections against a lot of attacks. But also, it's a fresh idea to start with Ming technology to learn more about the new world and explore a little bit about this training technology. And also, what I like is the uniform language. So you only need to learn JavaScript so you can master all these technology to do the whole website. And also, it's a great experience for the future web development because I built a website on the ASP.NET before. Now this time with the Ming stack, I have a more extensive view of the building technologies regarding the webs. And I also want to build more user-friendly interface design again, so be good looking. If that was a social networking application, you might also want to design more addictive. So but for now, this is just a resume showcase, and it's a portfolio that towards the prospective recruiters. So this is the layout of my design for the working flow. I designed and how they look like, and they all hook back with the database services. This and also this week, because of the presentation, I also worked a little bit with the user. So now the database is working for the registration and login. And later on, if everything, these three parts is working, and we're gonna integrate them and test this. Now, so for the fourth stage, will be on the local one. And if everything is working well, then as I said before, I'm gonna deploy this service and the project to the Microsoft Azure. And later on, and maybe do some testing, send the links to other people about the website, so they can try to make an account to test with the edit profile and repository and stories. And after the improvement, there will be the final project. And for this week, about the milestones. Currently on the backend development, so I will be connecting the dots from the front end. Now the user register and the sign up is completed with the user login authentication, but I will still need to deal with the edit field. So like mentioned before, the profile with the resume and share stories and repositories. These are need to be working not only on the front end side, but also connecting the service that will enable users to edit their own profiles. And later on, the more database will be created. And for now, we have the users. Later on, we're gonna store each user for their resume, resume data, story data, and upload their repositories. And the next week after that will be the integrate and test. The final week before the presentation will be final check and deploy on the services. Maybe is it possible to links on Piazza to let classmates to check? Maybe it's possible. I mean, want you making some tests with the online services. That's basically how the project goes. I have a to-do list, and hopefully we'll be finished by this time, and maybe improve a little bit with the UI and services last week before the final presentation. So, any questions so far?
I'm waiting for one of you guys to say, and oh, by the way, all my presentations were done off my system. That would be interesting, wouldn't it?
I had one question.
Yeah.
You have an AngularJS server, right?
Right.
And you have a Node.js server and a MongoDB server.
Yeah.
So why did you separate the Node.js and the AngularJS server? Because Angular itself has a backend Node.js server running, right?
Yeah. So they do have the servers. Like, I think it's a better idea to run like if you have some server that doesn't you have some response or user events that doesn't need a backend, so it's simply interact with the Angular. If it's connecting to the database, I want that handled by the Node.js. Let's separate the work.
Angular lets you do equivalently caching, so I think that's really what you're referring to. You get very fast response out of Angular if you let it cache, so it's basically running its own management just on the browser for parts of it. So
I use it once with Firebase. It's very fast.
Yeah, it's fast on the front end, so it's basically purely on the client side. So you can cache in users' data if they just need to interaction on the front end. It's very quick to fetch the data. You don't need to go into the database. I think that's a really good idea.
Nice presentation. Thank you. Okay, Vishnu and Avi, you're up. If you have to have HDMI, we might have a problem because that HDMI does not seem to be synchronizing the system.
Can you just go through that?
Not a problem. You'll get a break. Okay. No circumstances. I always do that. So. I'm very strict about it.
Project. Hold it. Then permission.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Avi. Today, I and Vishnu, we are going to present before you the virtual display system.
Could you you speak just a little louder, or maybe quite a bit louder?
Yeah, sure.
Talk to the back row. Nobody's sitting in the back row, so talk to Jianan.
Okay. Yeah. So, we're presenting before you the virtual display system. The primary concept of our project is we are developing a system that is going to render multiple views at a time for the user to work simultaneously on these views. Like it's going to have a web page that's going to have multiple elements, some PDF, some media views, or code snippets or everything running simultaneously at once. So this will allow user to have one workspace with different things running at a time. The primary goals that we are trying to achieve here is implementing a web page that is going to have all these multiple views, like an addition and deletion of all these views dynamically at any point of time. Like whenever the user wants a certain document element, he can add it. If he doesn't want it, he can remove it at any point of time. And then we are also allowing the user to change the sizes of all these elements present on the web page, and also dragging them to the restricted web page area, like within that area anywhere. Next we are also trying to save the current state of this web page. That is, all the elements that are currently available on the web page, along with the data that they contain, and also their positions would be saved to XML format. And then whenever the user is again opening that page, he will be able to get the page in the same state, having all the elements on the same position itself. So this is the basic layout of our web page. This white area is going to be our canvas area. That is the main area where the user is going to place all the elements. This is a menu. Here, the view is one element. We can drag this view and place it anywhere on the canvas. So when this would dynamically create an element, and if a user is adding a PDF to it, it would turn into document view. If he is adding a webcam to it, it would start the streaming of it, or other views would be media views or code snippets, and also the chat box. So the next is the save button. This button, whenever we click this button, it's going to help us persist the state of the web page. So in the background, everything is going to get stored in the XML format. The reset is going to help us reset the page.
So what you're doing is saving the page configuration, right? Not its data, but its configuration.
Yeah.
Where the views are placed.
Yes, along with all the positions on the canvas, like all the pixel positions.
Yeah.
The reset is going to help user to reset the page. Whenever the button is pressed, the database also would get reset. All the data would be flushed out, and the screen would refresh. So you would have a clean canvas with no elements on it. The delete is going to help us delete these elements that are present. So whenever user clicks any element and then press the delete button, it's going to get deleted. So the main highlight points that we are going to cover today are, first, the dynamic element creation. How the element is actually being created on the canvas via this dragging and dropping. Deletion of created elements, how the elements are getting deleted on the delete button press. The data addition to these elements, what all data are we adding to these elements via the drop function. Database creation and integration, what database, like we are creating a MySQL database and we are integrating it to our web page via this PHP. Next is database querying. We are sending the AJAX request to this PHP that is running and querying the database. Uploading and saving of data. We are uploading all the data that user is going to add to these elements in a separate folder and also to the database. Then element movements, how we are actually allowing user to drag the element on the canvas. And then session store would cover the persistence part, how it is actually getting stored in XML format, and restore, how the XML is being passed again via JavaScript to a web page.
So are we talking about the goals for your final development, or is this description of the probe agenda?
The probe
agenda. Are you going to have anything left to talk about in the final presentation?
Yeah, we do.
The chat boxes, mining, and the web view.
Seems like you're pretty comprehensive here.
Yeah, we try to complete as much as we mentioned in the schedule.
Good.
Yeah. So now he'll be taking over. I'll come back later to explain some more of the database part.
Hi, I'm Vishnu Viswanathan. I'm going to take you through the code and then the functionality of VDS. Since she has told everything about the layout of the page, I'm just going to jump into the page and then explain the functionalities. So this is our page, the main page where the main web page where we'll have all the elements. This is the canvas view that we showed, and then the buttons, and then this is like the element is like, you check this PDF, it's like everything is generic. So with anything of it, we can have any of the views. First one is dynamic element creation. We just have to have this functionality of just dragging and then dropping it. The dropping should give us an interactive and then a sophisticated box inside which we'll have our whatever data that we have to view. Everything should be there. The box should be made. The box should be able to be dragged anywhere inside the canvas. These are the basics of the dynamic element creation. And as you can see that the elements are to be arranged in a proper format. So I'll just take you through that. So I'm gonna just drag it and drop it. So now we can see the box. So this box has 3 elements actually. It has 3 views inside that. So we have divided the views so that the functionalities can be just, it varies in the functionalities. The top box is the one which encloses the other 2 divs. So this one is what we call the mobile div. This is what we use to drag the element inside the canvas. And then this is the place where we have to drag and drop the elements that we have to view. We were able to find some functionalities with jQuery and all, but we just wanted to do everything in JavaScript. So the basic element JavaScript is the only thing that we're using here. So since now we have the view, I'm just gonna just take document and then so I'm just taking the same page and then displaying it inside this box. So the page will be displayed inside this, but you can see that it took some little like 2 seconds of time. So that's the backend process that is happening. So just like this dragging and dropping, it should do the following stuff for us. That is, should after dropping it here, this data should be taken from the HTML page and then sent to the PHP. The PHP will take the file's name and then it types in all the attributes and it will be saved inside the database. So the database, and then other than that, the database just will have the path for the file and then the file infos. And then we are saving this file into a folder called images that will have all the files that we are going to drop inside this. So
can you resize these boxes now?
yeah, I mean the resize is like I'm just testing it, so I'm just not going to do it. That's why I've given the scrolling as of now.
Fine.
Yeah.
So I translate your yes into I don't know yet.
Which one?
So I asked you,
Yeah,
can you resize the boxes? And you
Yeah.
said yes, and then you qualified in a way that I assume means I don't know yet.
Because if you're resizing, since we have 3 divs, if I'm resizing one box, so it should, I should make sure that the amount of resizing that's happening, that should be done in all the other 2 boxes too, dynamically. There I have some little bit of things to happen. So, okay, so now we can have like multiple elements inside this. Then, as you can see, like I can drop it here, and then if I'm trying to drag it outside, we can't drag it outside the screen. We're always inside. Then, uh, so I'll just go through the code of how we are going to resize it. How we are going to make it into a canvas into that block in which we can move it. So so in that we'll have two things taken into consideration. One thing is the whole screen, another one is the scroll amount. So the main problem that I was facing by just using JavaScript and then trying to keep it under this is like if I'm scrolling something, the entire page value is changing, so that has to be taken care of. So just two parameters we use here. One thing is where this element is placed, and then the offset movement of this element from this place, wherever it is, and then to the place where it is moved. And then along with it, I'm going to add the scroll top. The amount of scrolling that's going to happen here, that has to be added to it to just make it find that even if it's scrolled down and then if you're scrolling it up, it won't go beyond this edges. So that's the basic idea of canvas elements block. And then, so now, as you can see that this is a separate div object, and then this is a separate one, and then the total one is a separate one. So what we tried doing is that we'll have the names of these things, different names, but they'll have an array object, a p-value. A value is like appended to the end of them, which will uniquely identify them. It means that if I'm giving it as the names of these things are, the top one is created, and then the middle one is movable. This is the temp object. So all these three will have the p-value, that's an integer, as the same one. And this integer we are not initializing inside the page. We are going to get it from the database. So every time it's incremented, and then every time a new object is added, the object's values are added into that, and also the p-value is added. So the p-value will be whenever the new session is opened, we are going to take the p-value from the database. So that we'll have the count of how much we have. And then so now we have these elements. So as you can see that I didn't press the save button. So without pressing the save button, what we are trying to give is, okay, at least we can show the user where all the positions are dragged. So I'll just have the outline thing that we have here. I won't have we won't have this document saved into that because user didn't save it. He doesn't want the document to be saved. So I want to come out of the page, get back in. So okay, actually I'm moving that also. I'm taking that also. I changed the code, but I didn't know that.
Okay.
So yeah, so we're gonna take that also as of now. I had the mindset of not having it, but so as you can see that the elements are again there in the same
So
position.
they get restored, yeah.
Yeah, and here we have something called. Here we have to take care of the things like if the element is dragged. So every time it's dropped from that place to dropped into this canvas, we have to take a note of all the things like where it is stored and everything. And whenever the cursor is moved along with this by clicking on this and then moving it anywhere, we have to update the XML file that we're using for the persisting. So I'm just going to show how the file is done. File is created. We are hard coding as of now just to test. So whatever element I'm creating here, I'm gonna take everything and then put it into the XML parser. XML parser object will be having. So I'm gonna put everything inside that as the children of every element that is there. So for each element, for each drop, I'll have three elements inside the XML. One is the top one, another one is the movable one, another one is the temporary object. So this object, this is just a div as of now. So now I'm going to add something to that. So after adding this file, there is this new process of removing this element and then putting another element here. That's how we are gonna make it dynamic because we don't know which element is gonna come. It can be anything. So based on the element, we are just trying to change the property of this and then add it to the XML too. So the XML will also be updated based on that. And then resetting the DB, we'll reset it once after everything is. So deleting the element. So for deleting, as of now, since I have to store everything, I have to store all of the elements over this canvas. I'm not, since for testing purpose, I'm not putting the delete here. So it will have an X here in the future, and then a minimize button here, so that everything will be like we can click on it and then you can delete it. As of now, click on this movable object, and then click on the delete. It will delete the element. So this is how the element is deleted. So, and then now the resetting of the DB. Yeah, okay. User can save the session at any point of time when he is working on it. And just pull out things. So this save would help him to save it at any point. I have everything out here in the way that I want it. So
Doesn't look like that's exactly what you had before.
that's because this element is delete one, right? I deleted this element, but XML I'm not passing it. I'm not changing the XML value for that. That is like, I couldn't have find time for that.
Probes aren't expected to be necessarily totally complete.
So now I'm going to reset it. So resetting will just remove my complete XML from the database, and then it will just remove everything from the screen too. So now as of now, the summary of whatever we saw is that you can have the elements, it can be dragged anywhere, and then it can be saved, it can be deleted, it can be the reset of the entire canvas is also possible. Then, as Professor was asking, the resizing is like the testing is still going on. I'll add it soon. And I'll just show the bit of the coding
I'm
parts.
a little worried about your hard coding, but
Yeah, no, just the places where we got stuck for like an hour, so I just.
Yeah.
So as Zhimou was telling about the file map, Node.js is helping us to create a file. The file creation is easy with the Node.js. Like if we just give us file fs is equal to new file of, it's just creating a file for me. But the normal JavaScript, it doesn't create a file for us that easily. If you have to download, as far as the articles that we have read, you have to just download the file into the downloads and then just use it. But as of now, we want our XML to be updated. So now what we are using here is this. So the XML serializer is used here. But before looking at it, I'll just show you how the XML is getting the data from the database. Because we are not storing the XML inside a file. We are storing it inside database. So this XML doc is the parser. So this one is like, actually we found this function which takes the XML parse string. So this string that I'm passing here, it should be a valid form of XML. So it will just take it as an XML. The XML parser will be loaded with that. So in the beginning of the beginning of this page, what we'll have is we'll just have the root and /root. That's the only thing that we're going to have inside the database. It's going to be taken inside this using the parser string, and then we're going to give it to the XML doc. From there, everything should be added to the XML doc as children. And then in the end, as I showed you, the XML doc has to be serialized, and then the string is going to be saved again to the XML. We'll be showing the XML format inside the tables. So whenever we are going to create, whenever we are going to drop an element inside the canvas, so we are using the HTML page property of event.data transfer files. This data transfer file will have the complete information about the file, which we'll be sending to the PHP so that it will just extract the values and store it in the database. And then it will have the function of storing moving this file into the image folder too. So, regarding the dropping of the files, if you are going to create a new element and then put it here, care should be taken that the XML formatting should be done in such a way that if I'm adding the elements as children, like for example, we'll have the biggest top it had a biggest top one and then it had 2 divs inside that. So the XML should be added, as children in that same order. So the top one should be there, and then the mobile one should be there, and then the temp object should be there. So whenever we are going to drag and drop a file, a resume, maybe a PDF is dropped into the file, into this screen, exactly the place of where the temp object is there. We are going to just give me like 10 seconds. So here, when I'm dropping it into the document, on the drop I'm just checking the target. The target will be the target place of where the drop is done. So I'm just having that, and then if it is the temp object place, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna load the files again. So this load file will go to the function. That function will remove the existing object and then create a new object and then replace the child. In that way, we are going to get the embed ones in the embedded thing along with the source. Source is taken from the PHP. The PHP will return back the JSON. The JSON will have the name of the file and then the path of the file. Both of them we use it to just give it here so that the file will be taken. So this is the basic idea of the page, and then the persisting is happening,
So you have an in-memory store keeping track of the layout, and then you're persisting that to an XML in the PHP database.
Yes.
In the database.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's like as of now, what we thought was, as I told you before, just dropping it on the canvas in the beginning, creating of the element. The created element will be there in the XML. Whenever the element is created, it will be put inside the XML, and then the XML will be updated to the database too, so that we don't need to update everything at once. And then whenever it is changed, as I told you that the temp object will be changed. After changing the temp object, it is changing in the XML too. So everywhere the XML is going to be changed according to this, and then we'll be getting the same data as that of whatever we had, except the release string. The release string is not happening because I didn't add the code for that. So she'll be explaining about the backend process where we get the PHP. We get the values in PHP.
So this is our MySQL database, that is VDS1, and we are having 2 tables here. First one is files. Files is storing like four attributes, that is like unique ID, the name of the file that we are uploading, the user is uploading, the path is going to be the image, the folder where we are actually uploading it, or the folder is going to reside on a server, and the file type. This is going to be like image application slash PDF or video slash the media slash video and all the other image and document formats. The second table is sessions. This is for persistence. We are having file. This file name is like not that we are not using it anywhere. It's just given. The main important column is content column. If you see, currently it's having just root because we did reset the database. So this is like the default value that we are passing whenever we are resetting the database. But whenever we are adding any element at the whole of the XML string, as you can see, the complete XML is parsed and stored in this content, and this p value, as he explained, it's going to increment every time the element is created. So all these things we are storing in the database and then retrieving it.
That might be a performance issue, I would think. Every time anybody does anything, you're converting that state, that in-memory state, to XML in the database. And if you get, you get more and more things on the diagram, and if you got several people interacting.
Yeah, but maybe we can do it in this way, like if they click the close button, at that time everything can be added.
I'm not really trying to change your design, but just thinking about it a little bit with you, that it might make sense to wait for key. Maybe a timer that says, every 5 minutes we'll copy out what's in our in-memory store into the database, and anytime the user says save, we'll copy it, and something like that. So far there hasn't seemed to be any real problem with that. You've been able to, it hasn't been significant lags while you move stuff around. So
maybe we'll just add some function whenever user wants only, then we'll update this table.
I wouldn't get, you have this process going and it's working, so I wouldn't tinker with it right away, but maybe, as you get closer to the end, if everything's pretty much coming together, you might think about it a little bit and try and experiment.
I'm thinking of just making this inactivity. If it's not active, if nothing is happening on the page for some time, then we can just,
like that.
Now I'll show you the PHP that we used for all the three functions. The process file is the one which we are using to store the data that the user is uploading. So here from our main web page, we are passing this AJAX request that is calling this PHP and also sending the data. The files that we are dropping it on the web page, it's being sent via the AJAX request to this PHP, and then it's getting all the file data via this $_files, that is like PHP syntax, and then we are checking what is the file type. These are the acceptable file types that we have currently defined. We'll add a little more. If this is happening, then we are moving it via this move upload file function to this folder and also inserting it into the database via this insert query. Two things are happening whenever whenever this PHP is getting the files, it's uploading it to this folder and also adding it to the database.
Where did I put that code? Where did I put that code?
Yeah, it's. I didn't add it properly.
Using bookmarks is a really good idea.
So this is the function that we're using in our JavaScript, that is like load files. We are having one form data object and one XHTTP request object. So this all the files are getting appended to this form data, and then on load, this is calling this process files via post method and sending all the form data to this, and it's getting the response from PHP. So whatever PHP is processing, it's getting the response from that.
So that response we're just using to call a function where the updation of the names and everything is
Yeah,
happening.
it's an AJAX request that you're making.
So persist files is the PHP code that we're using for the persistence, XML persistence. Here we are having two main things that are happening. First, we are using a flag element, the flag variable, to check whether it's false or true. If it is false, it's running the select query. Select query is used for the restoration from the database. And if it is true, then it is updating the database. That is, it is saving it. So this is again being processed via AJAX request on the. So look for sessions. This is the one which is being used for the restoration purpose. Here we are sending the setting the flag as false, and then we are sending one more HTTP request that is checking, that is getting response from this PHP, that is the select query. Whenever the select query is run in the PHP, it's getting all the data that is in the session content form, and then it is sending it as a response to this, and all these things are being parsed via this this HTTP request and response of the PHP to this JavaScript.
We are just starting with the starting up our web page programming with this. On loading of the web page, this will be checked, and then whatever is there, we are going to take it here.
So you're pulling any arbitrary session out of the database that you want. Is that right? If I
No, we
understand
just
what
have one row which will have only one row, and then we're going to change only that one row. So whenever we're going to, first, as I told you, it will be root and root. Whenever it's going to be updated, it will be on the same row. So we're just going to take the same row again and then start it, and then here we'll have the function to just create the files again in the same place.
This select query is checking only for where ID is equal to 1. That is, we are just having just one row, and we are updating only that row every time. To update session is again, it is setting the flag to be true, and then it is sending this XML string that we had to this via this post request to this persist file. XML string would be then access to this persist file.
The serialized XML string is the one that we're going to send it here, and then it's going to be saved.
Persist file. So we are accessing this XML string that is coming via that, and sending it to this content this content of this
Just that one row,
yeah,
and
the
then the
content
content.
column of this sessions table. So this is just one simple query running update query on the sessions table, where we are just setting the content to be root /root and p value to be 0. So again, this is happening via AJAX request. This PHP is accessed via AJAX request.
We have the same things that we explained in these.
Talking about the schedule, as we mentioned that we'll try to finish the template creation, menu creation, document media view, and dynamic element creation by 10th March. So we successfully completed that. And then session state saving is like only the delete that is remaining, and resizing is remaining. Other stuffs restoration also we try to complete it, and repository as of now we are using MySQL database. We try to use NoSQL also in future, And next, we are aiming to complete the chat box and the sketch view, that is like the canvas on the canvas itself, which will have some stroke functions also. And these are ambitious goals that we did mention, to add like client server model where multiple users would be able to interact on this web page, and also UML diagrams we'll try to add it. So we are almost on the schedule.
The sketch view, I think, is somewhat more difficult than the chat box. A lot of functionality already in place for the chat box. It would be interesting. This sketch view is more interesting. You know, we've all seen chat boxes and we know how they work, and nobody will be surprised if you can. But the sketch view is kind of interesting. Saving otherwise the stuff that's a really interesting. I don't know how much support there is already, in people have built sketch views before. There may be some significant support that you can find for it. I think it would be a little more interesting if you could show, in your final project, your final demo. It wouldn't hurt my feelings at all if the chat box disappeared, but it would be really nice to see some, so I would suggest maybe you focus a little bit on that.
Even this, we are trying to do it in JavaScript so that till the end of the project, we'll be just, we'll just use JavaScript. That's the main goal of.
That's good. You're not using ECMA 6 at all. You're not using classes and stuff like that. It's all functions. If you have some time, which you probably won't, looking at what you have to do, but if you had some time, it might be interesting to try to write a little part of it in ECMA 6. ECMA 6 is totally backward compatible. It's just you need the 6 interpreter to take those. The classes are it's just prototype. It's a prototype model under the covers, but it's some syntactical wrappers around. I don't know yet. I haven't made up my own mind whether it's really any advantage or not. It might be interesting for you to try. Relative to the presentation of the code, it walked us through a little more detail of the code than you need to. I think if you showed us the overall structure, event handler, event handler, event handler, kind of a function naming thing, okay, and show us how they related. So here's an activity, and here's the function we call to get there, and here's the function we call to get there, and then walk us through a couple of the functions in gory detail, and the rest will say, yeah, more of the same, okay. So it would make it a little easier to follow, a little less scrolling around on your part, and it makes for a more effective presentation, I think. If you do that, you lay out the structure, and then you show us in detail a couple of them, then we'll be generous and we'll say, okay, yeah, I believe you could, you know the rest, if you can just show us. You might try to tune your final presentation along those lines. But I'm kind of saying that for everybody. I think that's good.
Any questions?
So is this designed for a single client?
Yes, as of now, it's just one user who's going to run it, and then he'll be having the page for him.
So what will happen if, let's say, 2 clients using this?
Yes, that's our ambitious goal of doing that.
I'm just generally asking what happens.
This is just going to be, we are just running it as as a page in the local host. So it's just, if you want to use, it's going to be the same page. If you want to have another page, you can just
No, I understand the
mechanism.
I'm just asking the phenomenon of what will happen if because it's very impressive, but I'm not sure. I just a little bit not sure how you implement the drag and drop phase. But yeah.
So if you have different users, then that model would be, I think, I'm not sure, that would be having a server which will be, so the database will be for